we can try to do to try to get something for the industry, and what more we can try to do to help with the individuals within the industry. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I have particular concerns with the smaller organisations, the one-person shows and the small salons, which probably are not qualifying for some of the grants that are out there. And I am really concerned about, especially mobile salons, mobile therapists, of whom I use regularly. And I know that they are not getting any kind of support and are finding staying in the industry really difficult. I did have a conversation with someone who's got a substantial salon in West Wales just last week, where they employ quite a lot of people and have made a huge investment ahead of COVID. And they are now so uncertain as to what's happening. They are considering not continuing in the industry, which is tragic but true, that people are afraid that there is no future for them to come back to, and I am really concerned about that. So the first part of the webinar, we're going to be listening to some experts from within the field. We're going to be hearing from Emma Meredith. Are you on your Emma?
Hi. Hi, Caroline.
Right. Hi, Emma. Jack Tan, I can see Jack. Leslie Blair. Leslie, are you on you yet? Yeah, unmute yourself, Leslie.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Yeah, I should have known you'd be here, Leslie.
Yes,
a big welcome to Madeline Raynell, who's on instead of Gio from Treatwell. Welcome, Madeline. It's lovely to have you on, and hopefully we can have a proper conversation another time, but look forward to hearing from you. Millie Kendall, we can all see Millie.
This is like the roll call, isn't it? It's like being
It
at school.
is. Yeah. But you're the top of the list, Millie, don't worry. And Victoria Brownlee from Director of Policy and Public Affairs of the NHBF, and Karen Young from the Federation of Holistic Therapists. Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Some people are new to this group, some people we've seen before. So I think it's the idea that we just allow people to have a speak, and then we ask them some questions. Is that the idea, Louise?
We thought it would be best to just dive in to questions.
Okay, well then I'll start off with a question, and it's probably to everyone, but particularly Jack, I think, with the mobile therapists. Are you feeling a huge, or are mobile therapists really feeling the effect of this more than anyone else at the moment?
Yeah, I guess we do have one of our mobile therapists, part of our network, on the call today as well, Natalie, who's kindly agreed to join us today. We've been speaking to our community very often, and the effect on this has been huge. A lot of the professionals have resulted in having to either find temporary work or find alternative sources of income during this period, particularly with the beauticians who have not been able to work pretty much the majority part of 2020, and with a sort of a somewhat of a positive sentiment closing towards December and thinking that 2021 will be a better year. Unfortunately, that has really dampened the sentiment, the morale, and to that end, a lot of our beautician partners, for example, have found other income sources, other work, and some of them have pivoted their careers entirely. We did look at some of the earning estimates for the month of November, and this was a request I understand from Millie and for the Treasury conversations. And what we're looking at, particularly for the data that we have for London-based beauticians, the net position that they're living on with the self-employment grant comes in at around £1,400. Now, living in London with about £1,400, you're not going to get very far. Your rent and your bills and everything else that you have to pay. So really, there's a lot of pressure on the sector. There is a significant proportion of the beautician therapists that we do work with don't qualify for the grants because they fall in some of the gaps around timings.
Thanks for that, Jack. Judith is on here, and I know Judith can't stay for the entire meeting. So my co-chair, Judith Cummins, do you want to come in now, Judith, before we open up to anyone else?
I suppose my question is centred around the immediate, which is, you know, what are the immediate and most pressing concerns that we need to raise, and then also looking forward in terms of what long-term consumer shifts, if any, have happened in the sector, and how can we help with that. So both questions to everybody. Wanted to know how we can help.
Okay. Who wants to take that?
I'll take it.
Okay, go ahead, Millie.
I think whilst, and I totally appreciate that mobiles and self-employed are very challenged at this time, I do think that we mustn't overlook the fact that the bigger businesses, the larger salons, have massive overheads. And during periods like this, those overheads don't disappear. So I think that sort of we're looking at critical vulnerability on both ends of the spectrum. And I think there's two things that we want. One is an emergency fund, like other sectors have had, and two is a VAT reduction. And the VAT reduction is critical for recovery for those larger businesses that have massive overheads, huge teams. They're still paying NI, pension, rent. That's it. I'm done. No.
Can I jump in there, Caroline? Just
yeah, hang on, Leslie. So is that an answer to the question or to ask a question?
To answer the question.
Right. Okay, you can take. Please, then, Leslie. That's good.
Okay, so yeah, just to kind of concur with what Millie has said, and I think, you know, I was speaking to a large salon this morning, and for their furlough bill, just for the NI and the pension contribution, it's 15 grand a month. So they're not earning any money. They've got 80 grand a year on rent. They've got a very, very large amount of rates. So whilst, yes, you know, we appreciate the full sector is affected, large salons are going to take a long time to kind of bounce back from it as well. They've had their loans, they've, you know, used all the finances they've got, and they've got staff over and above. So whilst, yes, you know, the smaller salons, we really, really need help for them. There's absolutely no doubt about it. For mobiles, for large salons, the funding that has been there, whilst it's been very, very generous for a lot of people, it hasn't even hit the sides for what their bills have been and what they've had to pay throughout the whole time that they've had to be closed. So I think we really, really need to appreciate that and look at that very seriously. But definitely, as Millie said, the VAT reduction and some sort of emergency fund, to answer Judith's question, is absolutely essential.
Yeah. The knockback that I'm getting on the VAT is that a lot of people are saying that a lot of people don't qualify to pay VAT anyway. And there seems to be a bit of scepticism about what's the benefit of us asking for that. And I do try to say why it's a good thing.
I'll tell you what it is. It is about a quarter of the salons that are registered, and they employ half the workforce.
Right, okay, well that's a good stat to have.
Yeah, and it's also half the turnover of that sector. So it's half the turnover, half the workforce, but only a quarter of the businesses.
Right. Well, that's good to know. That's really good to know. Emma, I can see your hand up. Is it an answer to the question?
Well, yes, it was. And it was also to follow on what Millie just said then about there are salons which, if they have a VAT reduction, it will help improve payback to the common purse. But I think as well as salons, I think it's really important as well. Obviously, I'm here representing the suppliers and the manufacturers. So there is a knock-on effect on the manufacturers as well, because their income is inextricably linked with salon.
Yeah.
So our members and the salons that they have supplied, yes, in a massive drop in revenue, 80 to 60% in revenue. But I think we've also, the other thing that we've got to remember as well is the impact of waste. So with all of these lockdowns, a lot of stock has had to be wasted, which obviously impacts on the financial burden for the salons, but also from an environmental point of view, that's not good. So that's another thing to consider. And I think the other thing as well is, yes, definitely the reduction in VAT, definitely extension of grants rather than loans, because the concern is how do we repay the loans?
Yeah.
But also, I think we shouldn't underestimate what support is there for mental well-being and mental health. A lot of people were telling our members that this lockdown, this current lockdown has hit people from their mental well-being, not just salon owners and their staff, but also members of the public. So what are we going to do to help people recover financially? Also,
I'd agree with that 100%. It's a massive issue. In terms of parliamentarians, I can see that Alex Davis-Jones is on the line. I can see there's a representative from John McNally's office on the line. And did I see someone from Peter Dowd's office on the line? No? Okay, well then I'm going to go to Alex to see if Alex wants to ask the question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everybody for on the call this evening. It's really useful for us to get this update as parliamentarians. I wanted to ask about those who are training and were looking to enter the industry, because obviously this has impacted them too. Do you see this impacting the future technicians and hairdressers and beauticians coming into the industry? You know, how has it impacted that, and you guys as employers in taking them on as well, obviously, that risk?
Good question for Helen.
Helen.
Hi, yes, absolutely. I mean, we have, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, cool. So we employ 100 staff, and a lot of it, we have 22 trainees, which we just can't bring them back, and that's extremely sad for them. And you know, they're all under 25 years old. I do think that is going to be a real concern, that we're not going to see so much in the short term, but we're going to see it more, as you say, in the long term. You know, it's 3 or 4 or 5 years down the line. I'm very concerned for my young staff, for their state of mind, for how we're going to keep them on. You know, our rent is £22,000 net a month, net of VAT, and I've got to break from my landlord. I think it's important. I just want to get something in about the VAT. I know we're going off a bit, but if you look at VAT as an input and an output tax, we're paying full VAT on our output. And yet, if we were a shoe shop and we're buying our shoes and then we're selling our shoes again, then that's fine. But we're not. We can only claim back such a tiny bit of a haircut or a leg wax. You know, it's the cost of the stock, which is 10% if. So we're paying full VAT on our output, and what I think we need to look at for the long term is to have 2 rates of VAT. Ireland have 9% on services and 23% on goods, which makes much more sense for us. We don't actually sell that much. We sell haircuts, we sell time on the couch, we sell treatments. And we can only recoup such a small amount of that back on that. I also want to say the point you made at the start, Carolyn, there is help and support out there. I'm trustee and director of the Hair and Beauty Charity, and the cases that we have seen, we Zoom every week because there's such a huge amount of them. We can't wait for our monthly meeting. The ones that we looked at yesterday were urgent calls for help. Someone couldn't feed her 6-week-old baby. She didn't have a cot. All these beauty stuff that are slipping through the net. But through the campaign Beauty Backed, we did ring fence £500,000 of the funds to assist those in dire straits. So I think we really need to get it out so that there is support for them out there. They can come to us and we can give them the help, but the numbers are rising absolutely frighteningly.
Okay. I can see Peter Dowd's face on the screen. Are you there, Peter? Right. I was hoping that if Peter was there, he could have talked to us a bit about his thoughts around the VAT, because obviously that's quite specific. My feeling is it would be I've seen you, Victoria. Yeah, I will come to you now. That sounds like a perfect solution, but unfortunately...
Peter is here.
Right, okay. Peter, can you share some thoughts around the suggestion that there were 2 levels of VAT? As a man who has a lot of knowledge of how the Treasury works.
Right. I mean, I think the issue with VAT is that VAT is one of the big 5 or 6 taxes, and it brings in about £123 billion a year. But the issue at the end of the day comes down to, and I'm not making any judgment on this, it's just that the practical arithmetic, the arithmetic of this. If you've got about 120 odd million pounds for the year coming in VAT, and you determine that you're going to forego whatever the figure might be, 1 million, 2 million, 5 billion, 6 billion, doesn't really matter what the figure is for the purpose of this discussion. The argument is you have to find it somewhere else. You also have to factor in, if you do lose that revenue, other than where do you get it from, is the loss of that revenue going to have a positive impact on the economy? So you forgo the revenue directly from VAT for the sake of argument, but actually you benefit from the increase in revenue from other taxes. So they're all sort of factors that have to be taken into account when you make a determination as to where your tax levels are actually going to be. There are other factors that come into account as well. We have about £400 billion worth of tax relief in one fashion or another in the country. So that might be anything from entrepreneurs relief through to the tax relief we get on our pensions. And that might well be an area in relation to tax relief that could be considered. But again, there's a loss to revenue, and whether or not the loss to revenue is, in a way, made up again by the investment then people make into a business. So it's not simply a case, and I'm not suggesting anyone is saying this, but it's not a straightforward case of saying, oh, well, let's reduce VAT to level X or level Y. A whole lot of other factors then get taken into account in terms, as I say, loss of revenue, but what the economic growth advantages to the country might be as a result of the reduction in VAT in that particular service. I think that's it.
I think the only thing I would add to that is, though, if we don't have this VAT rate, people will not survive. These businesses will go under anyway, so you're going to lose it anyway.
Yeah, but Helen, when you we all agree with you, but when you're dealing with the Treasury, you're not dealing with an emotion, you're dealing with a department to do everything by numbers. So Peter, being realistic, what's the chances, or how best could we make representations to the Treasury to try to get this argument across to them?
Well, there's a couple of things. The first one is it depends upon, I think that the government, presumably in the light of Brexit, forget the COVID issue for the purposes of this, in the light of Brexit, may be in the position to be more flexible in how it applies or doesn't apply VAT in that regard. So that's a factor to take into account. But how long that will take is a different kettle of fish. In relation to the tax reliefs, they've been fiddling about with tax relief reassessments for donkeys, and there's no real movement on that one. So I'm not quite sure how far you get with that. There's always the possibility of making a case for as has happened in other situations, a temporary reduction in VAT pending COVID, pending the outcome, the next 6 or 12 months. There's always a case to make that. But all of those decisions will be made in the spending review, which is due in the not too distant future. So trying to fit something in between now and then, to be honest, would be a little bit of a challenge.
So Peter, can I throw the gauntlet down to you? And can I say to you, could you put something together that we could send to the Chancellor from yourself, Judith, and I, around some kind of framework that we could try to get as a temporary measure to at least start to help the situation? And if we get it on a temporary measure, then we can maybe look to the future. But they're not going to buy it into it now as a permanent issue, but they may do something on a temporary measure until COVID is over and done with. So is that a challenge I can give you, Peter?
Yes, it will be. It would be okay to do that. And it'd be helpful to have one or two of the people who've spoken about this to have a conversation with me, so I can get a bit more of the context about that one.
We'll
facilitate that one for you. Yes,
right. Carolyn, we already had a meeting with the Treasury last. I can't remember when it was now because I've lost track of time. and they have asked us for a proposal on that. What I think we should, I'm going to hand over to Victoria, but what we should be doing is probably sending some of that information over to you guys.
Yeah,
so
because
like.
There's two ways. The Treasury will look at your asks, and they will look at our asks, and they will look at them differently. But if we're all asking for the same thing,
yeah, I know, absolutely. Well, Vic can explain. Go on.
Okay,
Victoria's got all that.
Okay, so what we'll do is, after Vicky's spoken, we will make sure that someone from Interrel facilitates the conversation between Millie, Victoria and Peter to try to move that on. So over to you, Victoria.
Actually, I wasn't going to add anything about that. I think most of it's already been said. I was actually hoping to speak about printing, but I'd be more than happy to have the conversation.
I'll grab a swallow, all right? I like take it out, flip.
Sorry, apologies.
That's all right. Yeah, but just basically agree with what Helen's been saying and Millie as well. And I think a lot of our most recent stats show that the deficit between the income coming in from the various grants that we've been getting from government and the fixed outgoings that businesses have, whether they're open or closed each month, show that the gap just isn't sustainable. And the feedback that we have from the sector, from all of the different surveys that all of our different organisations have done, is that the 5% VAT cut would be the most beneficial in terms of helping them get through that. But that is once businesses are reopened, and that will also be a massive help in the issue that we'll have, in that when we do reopen, we are reopening under social distancing and the guidelines that we were following previous to this, and that is at a maximum of about 70% capacity. So we need that VAT cut to sort of make up that gap between the 70% and the 100% that we were perhaps working on before, because of the fact that we just can't facilitate as many clients as we could before. Going into the apprenticeship issue, we haven't got the physical space to be taking on apprentices, because every person that you have working in your salon needs to be bringing in money to make up for all of the money that you've lost. As much as we would love to be taking on apprentices, our latest research says only 4% say that they are definitely likely to take on apprentices in the next 6 months, and that's really sad.
Yeah.
Because, as Helen was saying, we've got an industry that's essentially going to end up being very highly unskilled, or even really retracting back and trying to death, and we need to do whatever we can to avoid that, whether that's specific funding to try and generate apprenticeships. But I actually
can we just stick to the tax issue a minute, and then we'll move on to the apprenticeships in a moment, Helen, in Victoria. So can we say that we're going to establish a bit of a subgroup here, which will include Peter, will be led by Peter, to specifically look at a proposal that this group can put to the Treasury around the VAT and the tax reduction, so we could potentially get on a temporary basis from the Treasury. So if we're all agreed on that, then we can make a note of that, and we can get in touch with the relevant people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going on
that as well. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to go now, everybody. Good luck with it. I'll talk to you later. Lovely to see you today. Bye.
Thank you. Brilliant. Going back to apprenticeships, that's a different department, and we're talking education here. So we need to be thinking about some kind of representation to the Department of Education, maybe through our colleague Toby, about who has responsibility for apprenticeships, about how we can get some kind of training package or some kind of not a loan but a grant or something that we can encourage. Yeah, I can see your hand, Emma. That we can use to make sure that we keep apprenticeships open, especially those that have already started, because those who have started obviously need to have priority over those who have yet to start any kind of apprenticeship. Do we know roughly how many people are in the system currently in apprenticeships who are on hold waiting to go back into business? Anybody? Is anybody sort of well
I can find out that figure for you. Diane Hay probably will have that figure. She works with apprenticeships. I'll get that for you in feedback, Caroline.
Well, I think Caroline's on the call. Caroline Laracy's here, so she
Is she?
Yeah.
Are you here, Caroline?
I think she's dialed into the webinar as opposed to the...
Oh, yeah, she's dialed in. But yeah,
she... Okay, so Victoria, you can take that back to Caroline.
She's coming in.
So we could maybe look at I think.
Hi all.
Hiya,
Sorry,
Caroline.
I was in listening mode
Brilliant.
as part of it. So what I've been doing is I've been feeding into the ESFA about the apprenticeship, because we have quite a number of things on apprenticeships that's happening. So what we've got is a delay in learning. So the majority of apprentices have actually lost now 6 months in learning, which has a massive effect on the sector, because that knocks onto the new apprenticeships for next year. We've also got the issue with national minimum wages for apprenticeships, because you get the first year of an apprentice at an apprenticeship rate, and then it's the next, it goes on to the relevant minimum wage. But all the apprenticeships have been knocked on 6 months. So salons, rather than now paying apprenticeship wages, are having to pay full minimum wage for their apprentices, which they cannot afford. And so what unfortunately they're doing is having to make their apprentices redundant as part of it. You've also got the fact that social distancing doesn't allow apprentices to be in the salons as part of that. So we've already seen that 30% of apprentices have been lost as part of that. As Victoria said, only 4% of employers are saying they're actually going to be taking on apprentices. And so that still skills shortage is real, it really is. And what we're looking at is a sector skills recovery plan. So what I'm going back to the SFA and saying is, we need money for employers to keep on apprentices, but we also need some sort of mechanism to allow employers to employ older apprentices because of those differences in the national minimum wage as part of that. And so that's what they're coming back to us as part of that. So there's quite a lot of things in the pipeline regarding apprenticeship.
Blew myself up on it. Fucking
Tom, please.
What do you mean, Tom, please?
I'm sorry about that. My son's just come in. So that's really interesting stuff, Caroline. So where are we at? Who are we going to be asking for this money? Which government department? Education?
So it's eventually the Department of Education, but it's the Education and Funding Council, yeah, the ESFA agency, yeah.
It's pointless Alex or I trying to do anything, because it's a devolved issue for us.
Yeah.
So we need maybe Judith, if Joe is taking notes or someone here, maybe this is another subgroup, because I think this issue's gone so big now that we need to be coordinated and isolate the areas of concern, so that we come up with a universal answer, but we need to split it up so we got proper answers for every different section. So that's really good. So we'll speak to Judith, maybe you and Judith, and was it Helen who had an interest in, and Helen could maybe have a conversation and come up with a form of words and an idea of how we take that forward with the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Are there any other issues? Oh, sorry, Emma, you wanted to come in with something.
No, that's fine, thank you. Actually, it was just going to be a feedback from one of our members who had spoken with one of their salons. And Caroline, you may already be aware of this, or this may not be a flyer, but when you were asking about possible suggestions, is a voucher scheme supported by government to pay part courses and costs made available through insurers or trade associations feasible?
Yeah, there's something like that. The biggest worry is we're not going to get the apprentices through. There's a big hold up on endpoint assessment. So that last part of the assessment they can't do because they can't work in the salons. It's part of that. We all know the prevalence of short, sharp courses and the dangers that it has in the sector. The worry is that we're not going to get the right candidates through with the right qualifications. People are going to jump on these short, sharp courses, and we're going to have an influx of people into the sector that haven't got the relevant qualifications.
Yeah, and that's the worry, isn't it? It's the lack of training, yeah. So we'll stick with the plan of Judith, Caroline, Helen, having a discussion around apprenticeships and see where we can go with that. What's the other big issues that we can take away from the bigger picture and isolate somewhere?
I need my hair done.
So do I.
Tell me how much is left then.
Apart from that, Jack, is there something specifically around mobile therapists that we can try to work on with BAs? Is there something we can say to them, if you provide X, you will save Y, Z and N?
I think the major things have been covered, you know, by around the VAT point. And obviously the therapists that we work with, you know, by and large aren't VAT registered because they fall under the threshold. However, you know, for businesses like ours, for example, we made a loss of in excess of £4 million last year because of the gap in the training periods, right? So I think, you know, for us, like we still pay VAT on all of our transactions and orders. You know, I think, you know, we would love to be able to continue to support, you know, our community and practitioners. We've put together various different schemes in place. You know, we put together a lending facility for some of the therapists that need some sort of, funding. And I think the VAT reduction point that was mentioned will be very helpful to our business, which in turn will allow us to help our community as well.
I mean, I am really nervous of these voucher schemes, if I'm honest, because I think the Eat Out, Help Out may have actually had an impact in the beginning, but it ended up having quite a lot of negative publicity, not least of all because it was spreading COVID, because people were actually in the same place. So, and I think the messaging that we're getting now is that the money that the government spent on it wasn't money well spent. So if we're going to go down that road of a voucher scheme, I think we have to make sure that it is money well spent and that we can honestly say that it's had the desired effect of keeping people in jobs and it's given them adequate qualification. And like Caroline said, we've already seen the dangers of inadequate training within the industry, not so much on the hairdressing and the nail side of things, but certainly on the aesthetic side of things. We've seen some real horror stories and we have to be really careful of that. So is there any other... Go on, Millie.
I think we need to be, I think the where we need the most support right now, because a lot of this is in motion, is ensuring that we don't end up in a phasing system again, and that when we do reopen, because obviously we will reopen at some point, we have no idea when that will be, we don't end up back where we were in the summer.
Okay.
I'm really concerned that with the new variant that there could be challenges with that, and I just think that I think we really need to come together as an industry just to ensure that we open with a bang, we open all together, we open the first phase.
And that comes back to the confidence thing that we've talked about before. And I think
COVID security, all that.
So why don't we have a separate group again, which I will lead on, and we will just put together a really strong plan on confidence, so that we got the 3 strands which are the most important that we can give individual attention to, and then bring them all back in together on one. So we'll write as the APPG, but we will give it some special attention, if you like, give it some love. Helen.
Yeah, I ran a really scary stat this morning, which has not made me feel very good, I must admit. Pre-2008, customers were coming every 8 times a year, which was every 6 weeks. That was pretty much set in stone since God was a lad. Like, think about your mum going to get her hair done and everything else. The latest statistics we've got here now, as clients are only coming every 12 weeks, which is 4.3 times a year. So they used to come 8 times a year. Now they're coming 4.3 times a year. So, you know, we've lost half our client base. And that's just been in the last 6 months, and that's crept right up again. There's so much fear around what we do, about it being safe and secure and being trapped in the treatment room on a couch with somebody, and how do you keep it safe? And, you know, I think that's a real concern, because once we start to trade and then we're paying all our costs and our business rates and our rent, and those customers haven't come back again, and we haven't got a break in our VAT, we will not survive as a sector. We just won't. So I think that's a real dilemma. What we do about it, I don't know.
Well, Helen, you can join Millie and I and whoever else is going to be on this subgroup talking about putting confidence back in, because that's some really good stuff there. And the guys from Interel will come up with a list of who's going to be on what group, but we can meet separately, and then we're not getting confused with anybody else's issue. The other thing I was going to suggest, given devolution, and I can see we've got John and we've got Alex, is the picture in Wales is different to the picture in Scotland, is different to the picture in Wales. So I'm going to suggest that, and this is really interesting because John McNally is an MP with his party is in power in Scotland, and Alex, like me, is a Labour MP whose party is in power in Wales. So maybe Alex, you could have a look at the situation in Wales based on what we're doing as a Labour government, and maybe John's team could put something together based on what's happening in Scotland. And I know Leslie Blair will be more than happy to help you at John's team in looking at that, and we will find someone to help you, Alex, so that all the parliamentarians on here have got a specific role in where we go forward from this, and it'll all come back in the end as one whole, rather than us trying as a group to do everything together. We just need to concentrate on our specialities, if you like. And obviously, Alex, I can help you with anything on that as well. But does that all make sense for everyone?
Carolyn, can I just ask as well, if it's, being as there's cross-sector support and things like the Directors' Income Support Scheme, which is meant to be helping with that. I mean, ours is about an estimated 19% of the industry doesn't receive any kind of support. And the Directors' Income Support Scheme, it's been written by the likes of the FSB, CBI, I think. Is there anything, is there a benefit for something like the APPG to sort of add our flag to that mast and say we also support that, and being as public as we can to get as much
if you could get us some information, Victoria, on that, because you've thrown that one at me and I'm not aware of everything about it. But if we can get that to the guys in Interrel, we will come up with our way of actually making sure we show our support for that.
Yeah.
And we leave them do the work, but we will add our support for it and we'll get on with our own work.
Because apparently the Treasury are quite lukewarm about that one, that they're seriously considering it, and that will be really helpful for our industry.
It will, and then we can, as a whole, as an entire APPG, can make representations to the Treasury in support of what's on offer, as well as the other stuff that we've talked about today, which we need to separate out and try to get some impact going with it all. Is there anything else before we move on to the next one? Any specific area that we think that we need to be looking at, that we can subcommittee it and do a sort of an intense report on? No? Well, in that case, we're going to move on to the second part, and we have some speakers here, and I've lost my papers because I nearly chucked them at my son when he came in swearing. Apologies. Right, we have Helen Ward, who is the Beauty Ambassador for the NHBF and Managing Director of Richard Ward. We've already heard from you, Helen, so that's lovely, but you get to speak more now. And we have, somebody tell me who else we have, because I've lost my bit of paper. I know we have Jack Tang.
We have Natalie Daly, who's a practitioner from Urban.
Oh, hello, Natalie. I can see you on the screen. Yeah, go on, carry on, because I can't find my bit of paper.
And then we've got Jane Bolbeck as well. Do you want to introduce yourself, guys?
Right, so we'll start with Natalie, and then we'll go to Jane, and then we'll go to Helen, and then we'll go to Jack. How's that? So Natalie first.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm a mobile therapist with Urban Massage. I started in 2018, and to put it mildly, my income has decreased rapidly because of the COVID pandemic. I've not been able to work. Well, I've been working on and off probably since the pandemic started, but my main concern is the drop in income, obviously. You know, I've gone from probably earning quite a good salary working with Jack and Urban to having to rely on universal credit. I'm one of the lucky ones because I've got loads of my fellow practitioners that have not been self-employed for a very long time, that have fallen through the cracks, that don't qualify for universal credit, that don't qualify for the self-assessment grant, and have now found themselves in dire straits. They're having to rely on savings, handouts, charities, those that can actually have access to them. And it's actually upsetting, it's depressing, and I don't even know where to begin actually, because, you know, I've worked so hard to create a career for myself because I love well-being, and I'm now being told that I can't do it at a time where I think we need to be doing it, especially massage for mental health reasons. If anything, it's going to help people feel relaxed, it's going to help people feel like they're able to continue and they can't even have access to that now. Because obviously I understand about the transmission, you know, I understand that people are a bit fearful of people coming into their homes, but we've got all the PPE, we've done all the hygiene training, but clients are afraid to book us. And there's been a massive decline in my bookings. And to be quite honest with you, I was thinking maybe I should just retrain or go back to my original job of working in a nursery. Do you know what I mean? And I just think it's a really sad situation that we all found ourselves in. And I wanted to go back to a point that somebody was making about apprenticeships and stuff like that for the younger generation. I'm an older learner, you know, I'm approaching 50. I went back into training, you know, post-divorce. I created this wonderful career and it's been dragged from beneath me. So it's not only the 25-year-olds or under 25-year-olds, it's also the middle-aged women that are that want to retrain and can't have access to it because they can't afford it, for one thing. So when you were talking about a voucher scheme or grants or something like that, I think that's a fantastic idea, because all the CPD that I've had to do as being self-employed, I've had to pay for myself. You know what I mean? I'm in a position now where, yeah, I'm on universal credit and they might be able to fund it for me, but I still have to wait for a decision from somebody else, you know? So I don't like feeling out of control.
Yeah, I get that entirely. I personally, I have massage regularly, and when I lost my dad over Christmas, so one of the things I could dearly have done with was going to have some kind of treatment. But the girl who does my nails, she's now making jewellery and can't see herself returning to nails. The girl who was doing my eyebrows and other things, she said she's taken up, she's doing knitting and crocheting and selling it because it's the only other thing she can do with her kids. So, you know, the knock-on effect for people has been absolutely traumatic. It's just awful.
Could I also talk about the guidance, because the guidance is very wishy-washy and it depends on what sort of association that you're with that says it's okay to work and okay not to work. It sort of like describes the mental health aspect, but you're only able to do specific types of massage. Do you know what I mean? And if you're talking about mental health, I'm talking about emotional well-being as well. It's not just physical, it's holistic. So that wasn't very clear in the guidance. So you've got some therapists that are willing to work because their associations say it's okay, and others that are like, no, we can't do it. So the actual guidance that they've put out for our sector, I don't think is very clear. Do you know what I mean? Depending on
the government guidance is quite strict. Or Leslie probably more about this than anyone, but the government guidance is quite stringent about what you can and you can't do.
Yeah. I think they make it very clear it's for an essential medical need to follow on from medical treatment, because obviously we are not qualified to diagnose any medical treatment. So I think when we've asked and what we've shared is that if there has been a long-term medical need that has been prescribed by a physician, doctor, etc., then you are fine to continue with that treatment. But I think there has been very strict rules. It can't just be somebody coming in the door saying, I'm feeling a bit stressed, I need a massage. There needs to be a bit of a background medical need for it. And I think only because of the dire state of the reproduction rate, they're just trying to be very, But I think, you know, the medical thing is the definite key, that it's got to be a medical need.
Okay, so I mean, Natalie, I think the answer is that you should be guided by what your professional body is telling you in terms of the guidance, because they're the ones who know best. I know that Alex is going to have to leave us soon because she's got a meeting that I should have been going to, but there's no time you're going to make it. But can I just say that there's a lady on the call who I did refer to, who was contemplating jacking it all in because of the insecurity at the moment. And she's offering, she's in Wales, Andrea, she's absolutely fantastic. She's more than happy to work with you and getting some background in the Welsh side of things. She's been a massive help to me, and I'll make sure you get in touch and we three of us have a conversation about it. Thank you. Thanks for that, Alex. I'm going to now come to Jane.
Right, hi there, thank you. I own a skin clinic in Chichester. I've owned a skin clinic in the town for 11 years. 3 years ago, I've started a new business. So in theory, I've kind of started again. Now I do employ staff. I have visiting therapists that rent rooms from me. And I've also, yes, I've got self-employed people. And I also have students that come. Because Chichester College, you know, it has a big beauty department. So, you know, what I find really sad is in our business, you know, we are a clinic environment, and we already operate to really high standards of hygiene. You know, there's always an opportunity to catch something, isn't there? So we got given all those guidelines, and we've done everything that we possibly can to, you know, up our game, and then we're still not allowed to open. But unfortunately, we weren't allowed to open to our full capacity. As we know in the beginning, it was very wishy-washy. First we could do it, then we couldn't. And they kept changing the goalposts. Now, you know, I've got like 5 rooms that need to be full in order for me to actually make a decent living and to take my business where it needs to be. But I can't have everybody in at the same time. I've got my visiting therapist come last. And some of the girls that are furloughed, I've just had to leave them, you know, part-time furloughed. They're losing continuity. You know, one of them bought a house during lockdown. And it's the well-being, and I do believe everything we do is well-being. You know, back to what Natalie was saying. You know, there is a loophole with pain. So obviously, if somebody's in pain, they can come. And I am a sports therapist, but I've just spent 11 years building up my skin business, not my sports therapy. You know what I mean? So it's really frustrating, I think. And then especially with the eat out, you know, help out to eat out, that was really frustrating as well, because here we are at a clinic with the highest standards. You know, I have nurses that work for me, and we couldn't open, but you could go and have a 2-for-1 meal, and it just seemed awfully unfair in all honesty. And before we went into lockdown, I'd taken on a loan because I wanted to invest in some new equipment. So I've been paying back the loan. And the other thing I wanted to bring to the attention was getting the grants, brilliant, and we do need more. But the problem with the grants was the landlords that were able, in a position to give us a discount, they're not. They're going, well, you got your grant. So the amount of business I mean, 2 of my friends have shut. 2 of them have attempted suicide. I spoke to another salon owner today. She, a very good friend of mine, she is 10 grand in arrears for her rent. She just said, I'm going to have to shut the door. Her landlord is not helping at all. And I'm hearing that over and over. And I appreciate some landlords might have, you know, mortgages and that sort of thing. But I just think there's a lot of greediness going on unnecessarily, because we need these grants going forward, because, you know, we're coming up to being in lockdown for a year here, and not being able to, you know, what was the point of me taking on a 5-room clinic, employing staff, you know, taking on students, like giving all this opportunity to then have it, as Natalie said, just completely, you know. And I'm 55. I'm not like, you know, I'm looking towards my retirement, and it's like, my God, you know, what is the future? And I'm a positive person. I'll do whatever I have to do. I've moved home. I've rented my own home out, you know, but I'm single. I don't have any children. But I've moved home. I'm here now in my bedroom having this. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah, the sacrifices are very personal.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just one clinic. You know,
they're going way beyond the business. They've really encroached into people's private lives, and I'm sorry to hear that. That's really awful. I mean, only thing I can say in defence, not of the government, because obviously I'm not part of the government, but in Wales we did open up altogether, and we did use the influence of this APPG and what we discovered about what was happening in England to influence the policy. Because I remember me and Andrew, who's actually listening on this call, having conversations about what is the best way to open in Wales, and we were able to influence that. So when they did open, they did all open together. Now we shut, then we're all shut together. But, you know, I think sometimes it's having the ability to actually get that message to the right person. Because I really don't think that this government had any idea about the necessity or the importance of the beauty industry when this all happened. You know, they just saw it as a frivolous, pink and fluffy addition to, and instead of, and nothing serious in there at all. And
no,
they
completely
paid the price
insulted.
Yeah,
I was completely insulted, because do they not know the high level of standard of training that we go through? Clearly they don't, which is quite, you know,
when the Prime Minister referred to it as massage and nail bars. I
know.
think that was just absolutely awful. But so you do
I mean,
have our sympathy.
Yeah, because we know our standard is high or higher than a hospital. You know, it is a clinic. What it is.
What we need to be looking at, two different things here. We need to be looking at a return to work package for Natalie and mobile therapists, something which is going to allow them to rebuild their business whilst still giving them an income. Maybe like a sort of a phased return to work almost, with universal credit or that kind of benefit, making up the shortfall of what you would normally have earned. So that's quite a specific area of work that we need to look at, and that's with the DWP. And then, Jane, we need to look at working with the Department of Business, Enterprise and Skills around what kind of revenue we can get for you to build your business back up, given the fact that you're an employer and a training opportunity. That's a different kind of funding that you need to what Natalie needs. And we need to get we need to get the government to understand that the beauty industry is not just one big massive blob with everybody knowing everybody else. It's not a village. There are so many different aspects to it, and so many different trades and ways of operating within it, that you can't have one size fits all policy in the hope that it will solve everybody's problems. It's been quite obvious that it hasn't worked in that way. So we really need, and I'll talk to Kath about this, about what we can do, what kinds of letters, what kinds of lobbying we can do to make sure that when you do reopen, that each individual section of the industry has got separate attention paid to it about the best way to support you on the way back to opening fully. And we'll give some attention to that, and we will feed back on that too. But Helen, over to you.
I think really just both of the, I mean, Natalie's made so many good points, so has Jane. I think the thing is, what we're trying to get across is we are stuck, and you just hit the nail on the head. We're so diverse. We're made up of freelancers, barbers, nail technicians, someone like me who owns a big shop doing hair. You know, we're very, very diverse. And it's quite hard for us because we're sort of quite split out. But I think the thing is, the more and more I hear, it's like, you know, and I'm probably in the same boat as Jane. How much longer do you continue trying to kick the can down the road? You know, if you're deferring your VAT and you're getting charged interest on your VAT, and you're deferring your rent, and you're deferring everything, and you're giving yourself time to pay for your stock bills and everything like that, at some point you can't just carry on booting the can down the road. And to furlough a team costs money. You know, so you have to, you know, we really need the help so quickly. We need to get this VAT cut. It won't help everybody, but it will help, as Millie said, you know, quite a large chunk. So that's one side of things we can do. Yes, we can have the long-term chat about the two rates of VAT, and that would be a long-term goal, I think. But, you know, we just need to help those who are literally sitting there weighing up, is it worth continuing? And people I know in this sector who are bloody good at what they do, like everybody here, and they're experts. Experts have trained so hard and trained at a late age, you know, all of that. Is it worth continuing? I think that is the thing we need to ask ourselves. And, you know, if we're asking ourselves that, then the need for help becomes urgent. And these are big names that are saying, there's no point carrying on with this. I'm just going to get myself more and more into debt. We have not had the help we need. We didn't have the help the hospitality sector had. You know, we were overlooked. And I think we're all, you know, we've had enough of that.
Yeah, and we said that from day one, that the industry was overlooked, and it was because it wasn't seen as being necessary, important, relevant, you know, a major player. I mean, I think the look of shock on people's faces when we were saying how much this industry contributed to the economy and how many people were employed within it. And when you add the bit about primarily women working part-time, you know, these are the backbone of the country, and we've not been regarded as important enough to give any attention to. So we've had some successes on some things. I think we need to build on that. We need to be a little bit stronger and maybe more aggressive in the way that we're dealing with it. We've tried the nice, we did try the naughty, and I think it did get us a little bit more attention actually when we did the whole Boris thing and him not being respectful of women in the industry, and it did get results. So maybe we need to be a little bit more aggressive, and we certainly, Millie, and the work that you do and your organisation and the work that Leslie does and the NHBF, I think we need to maybe come together a little bit more, joined up on this one, and do something a little bit more collaborative. Now, what was really successful was the lobbying letters that went from individual businesses to the government, and we need to maybe think about having a bit more of a campaign there.
We've definitely talked about that. I mean, I think the thing is that historically we weren't regarded as a viable industry. We know the problems that we had at the beginning of last year were catastrophic. We know we haven't had the support, but I think the positive news is we now have a sector-specific team at BAYS, and they are talking to industry on a daily basis, and so that is such a sort of game changer for our sector to have that team. There are 4 people there that are championing our industry. Is just, I mean, you know, we haven't really celebrated yet, but one day we will, Victoria, Leslie.
But the trouble is, Lily, that you've got it in BAYS. You need the same attention from education, from the Treasury, you know, from DWP. You need that kind of bespoke team in all the right across Whitehall in order for you to get what you actually deserve, and not just have one little team speaking up in all the other departments. So I think that's where we need to be aiming, is that you get a bigger slice of the cake. I think BAYS feels to me to be a really quite well positioned, and they did bring the Treasury in to a meeting very early on, and so that was good, and there were quite a few people from the Treasury there. It is like pushing a boulder uphill. And the big issue now is that we've got a new Secretary of State in BAYS. And if you remember rightly, the Secretary of State was the Minister who wrote and told me he was too busy to meet with me to discuss the beauty industry, Kwasi Gatang. So I think that's going to be an issue on its own, is that we need to convince Kwasi just how important this industry is. That is a big boulder. Yeah. And we really need to get over that. You're right, is the lobbying, the letters to MPs, that works. The media works, social media, probably not that important, but it's good to sort of back it all up. But, you know, I mean, it's sort of, it's bringing that all together, isn't it, in one go. But we've got a list.
Sorry, one thing we have shown is all our industry organisations have worked together on this. Yeah. You know what I mean, which has been absolutely fabulous for the beauty sector. It really, really has, to show that all the industry have had the support from all the organisations. Yeah, that has been superb. So we've got a list of jobs, we've got a list of ideas. I'm going to suggest that parliamentarians will have a separate meeting to discuss how we do what we've said that we're going to do, and I'm going to leave that to Interel to sort out, and Joe from my office. And in the meantime, anything you want to feedback into Interel, and we will get started on all those jobs ASAP. And we'll get back to you as soon as we've got something to say. So anybody who's agreed to sign up to do anything, then expect to hear from us quite soon, and we'll start the ball rolling on all those different aspects of what we're planning to do. Thank you for your time, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet everyone. Thank you. Take care. Bye. 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 Bye.